Now, before we get into the video, we have to congratulate Emma Hayes and the Chelsea women's team. I'm seeing it up on screen, 2-0 up at Old Trafford. And for me, that means the league's done. I don't want to jinx, and hopefully by the time this comes out, I'm not wrong and I haven't messed this all up for everyone. But winning the league on the final day, on a day before the game kicked off, it was on goal difference between them and Manchester City. After the heartbreak of the Champions League exit to Barcelona, this is the way to send off a legend before she joins the national team, obviously, of USA. So really, really happy for them and her. Of course, congratulations to Cole Palmer, Young Player of the Year. I know that was announced yesterday. I was hosting a tournament, a five-a-side tournament, so I wasn't able to make a video on it. But you know what my feelings are on Cole Palmer. He's been incredible this season. He's been the light at the end of the tunnel for us, bringing us points, bringing us up the table, sometimes single-handedly. So I think it's more than deserved for him. Now let's get into the video. Yo, people, welcome back to the YouTube channel. You already know what time it is. It's time for another video. Big up your damn selves in the building. Make sure you smash up the likes every single damn time and subscribe if you are new. Chelsea versus Bournemouth preview. Now, there's a lot to get into. There's Estevao transfer talk. There's Gallagher and Chalobah talk. There's Elise chit-chat. There's manager chit-chat from his press conference as well. And of course, Thiago Silva's last game guaranteed at Stamford Bridge. So we have to crack on and get into all of that. So let's start with Estevao because it is a verbal agreement to sign the Brazilian teenager from Palmeiras. Chelsea will pay 29 million up front and a further 19 million in add-ons. Of course, he will join in the 25 to their 26 season next summer when he turns 18 and sign what is expected to be at least a 7-year contract. Chelsea have been following him for a number of years and they see him on a similar talent level to Endrick. Also, Chelsea are closing in on this deal, but of course, what is significant about it is that it will not be going onto the books until obviously when the deal is done and he is officially joining. So you don't need to worry about, I guess, the finances, Chelsea's FFP situation in terms of next season. This is not going to be included in that on the accounts. So 25-26 calendar season is when it's getting accounted for. And that's basically everything. Of course, you know, in terms of the Elise, is this correlated? Is this linked? Joe Shields reportedly has had a heavy involvement in this deal, according to Ben Jacobs. And that's brilliant because, of course, Joe Shields has brought us Palmer. He's brought us Lavia. He wanted Elise as well. And he's clearly got an incredible eye for talent and he hasn't got anything wrong up until this point. So if Joe Shields wants someone, I'm pretty much on board. But what I will say is that in terms of this transfer versus Elise, of course, you're going in for someone who hasn't necessarily shown what they can do at the level that we're playing at. So you are taking a bit of a risk. I know Brazilian reporters are calling him Ronaldinho or Neymar, the next one up. I don't want to put that pressure on him with those names because those are some of the great icons of the sport and he's only 17 years old. So don't get me wrong, the attributes are great. Maybe the ball striking ability, the dribbling ability, the turn of pace. Great things to see. But let's not put that pressure on him because that comes with expectations in terms of when you arrive. You should be straight in the first team. You should be making impact immediately because that's what those level of talents do. And we just don't want to make that situation and that environment for him. I don't think that's fair. Now, in terms of Elise, it's similar price because 60 million, I think, is his release clause. He's obviously proven in the Premier League. He's given guarantees in terms of games, in terms of game time for Crystal Palace. He's there. When Roy Hodgson is not playing him or bringing him back early from injury, he's playing games and he's not injury prone. So a lot of people talk about his injury record and the concerns. Just take a look at him outside of Roy Hodgson's tenure. Vieira and obviously this new manager that's in now, he hasn't had an issue. So I don't really buy the injury concerns as much. And obviously he brings certain attributes that some of our wingers don't have. The set piece taking, the delivery from wide areas, the ball striking ability from long range. He's just a very, very intelligent, very good footballer. And you can see a world where he plays on the right wing, maybe Palmer plays in the 10, and they can interchange because they're both just as good in the 10 role as each other and able to pick up those central spaces, something that maybe a Madueke can't do. You know, he kind of has to stay on the right wing. He's not really a 10 at all. Estevao, can he play in the 10? Can he interchange with a Palmer? Obviously, this is without bringing in Kenji Pires. It's a lot of movement going on that side of the pitch. But I'm sure somebody will have to be sacrificed. Someone will have to be sold. Maybe it is a Madueke. Maybe it was Christopher Vell who wanted him. I'm not sure. But this is why me and Alex Goldberg are having quite the battle on Twitter. If you wanted Madueke and you told me that we had to sign him because he's just an unmissable talent and he's going to be world-class, then you actually have to wait for that player to get to a world-class level. If you're not willing to wait, then there's no point saying they can be world-class. And this is my argument with Estevao. I have no issue with us signing a world-class talent. Let me not say generational. I'm not going to get into that conversation, but a world-class talent in Estevao. But you actually have to then allow them to become world-class. What you can't do is in 2 years' time, when the dopamine has worn off, when the excitement has calmed down, and the next talent pops up, you can't say, well, Estevao isn't world-class yet, so let's go and get him because he's world-class potential. You have to actually allow Estevao and Kendrick Pires to become world-class at the football club, and that's going to take time. So as long as people have time, then no problem. But it's not something that I see a history with, I don't see it. I don't see that. I'll see it when I believe it. So yeah, it looks like they're joining in 2025. It also looks like our tactical set piece coach from Brentford is coming in as well at the end of the season. Listen, we've been awful on set pieces this season, so any help we can get, then fantastic. I'm sure he's going to hopefully give us man marking and just switch straight to that. I'm sure he's going to ask for a couple taller players as well, potentially. And yeah, I'm sure he's going to be looking at the aerial duel success rate. And like I said, with centre-backs, if we're tracking one, Tosin at Fulham and Anderson at Crystal Palace both got nice 60, mid 60 range, high 60 range aerial duel success rates. I don't think we should be going for someone like Mark Gurhey, who's not really that strong in the air. Even Nathaniel Chalobah's aerial duel success rate isn't actually that high, even though I'd like to keep him as a squad player. You've got to be looking at centre-backs that have an aerial duel success rate of minimum 65% and upwards, in my opinion. If we're going to struggle on set pieces, the centre-backs have got to both be capable in the air. And that's before we even get to the striker, and maybe them defending the near post like Didier Drogba used to be able to do, and maybe, a couple of other positions as well. So I'm sure that's something that he's going to be looking at in terms of recruitment. And also, in regards to Gallagher, because I just want to finish up on the transfer news before we move on. Gallagher and Chalobah, of course, have been spoken about as pure profit players for the summer. Pochettino is now coming into the end of season meeting, and it could dictate quite heavily on what the club decide to do with those two players, because they have been very important for Pochettino in this winning run. And I think Chalobah in particular in the last game was absolutely outstanding. So if, again, the board and the manager, which I've called out many a time, many months prior, if they're not going to see eye to eye and pull in the same direction, it's going to cause friction and it's going to cause a problem, because the manager is being judged upon the recruitment of the board, which is not the recruitment that he needs or he feels he needs for his system or philosophy. So if it's not matching, someone's got to move, and it probably will be the manager. If they're acquiring more technical players and not PMP, then of course they're going to need a manager that can handle that kind of recruitment. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes about. But yeah, there's definitely a clash in terms of what people want to do in those two corners in the camps. Amari Hutchinson apparently would also like to extend his stay, according to a report from Ryan Taylor Sport, at Ipswich for another season. Of course, if he's going to go there next season in the Premier League on loan, he's going to need to sign an extension at Chelsea because his contract is running out in 2025. We're not going to loan out a player with 1 year left, or he'll have to be sold for pure profit. I think we maybe paid a 6 million tribunal fee to Arsenal for signing him. We're going to make a big profit on that. I'm sure there's many European clubs involved and interested for a player that got 10 goals and 5 assists in the Championship. We could probably sell him for a minimum, I think, of about 35 million, maybe 30 million minimum. So we're going to make a healthy profit if we choose to sell him. Of course, it's another winger, another left-footed player, and we've already got quite a few of those, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does go. So yeah, let's see. Also, Thiago Silva is going to get a massive farewell banner at Stamford Bridge, which has been organised by We Are The Shed. So I'm very, very happy to hear that, because of course we know he's guaranteed to go. That's already been announced. He definitely deserves that. More than you can believe. And I think, yeah, outside of that, guys, we'll keep it pushing to the quotes. Of course, he said that in the quotations, 5th and 6th and qualifying for Europe is not something that they're going to celebrate. It's not something that he's going to go onto the pitch and speak to the fans like Ten Hag did and kind of ask for congratulations or a round of applause. He is going to allow the captain to potentially go out there and speak at the end of the game to kind of see off the season. But he's saying it's not something to celebrate. It's not success for Chelsea. And I agree. I don't think Europa League qualification and Europe is success. I think it's good, but it's not success. It's not something that we should be, celebrating. It's something that we should say, okay, pat on the back. With the injuries, with the circumstances, you've managed to finish in a respectable position, which is 6th and not 12th. However, it's confusing because not so many months ago, he was saying, of course, this is a new Chelsea. And of course, this is not the old Chelsea. So we need to stop thinking about the old Chelsea and stop thinking about the standards of the old Chelsea and start thinking about the standards of the new Chelsea. But now he's telling us this is not the standard. So it's confusing. But funnily enough, actually, in the press conference, he did have a back and forth with one of the journalists. And he said that whilst he has been misinterpreted by the media, his wife is also quite confused sometimes by his quotes and what he's trying to say, because he's not articulating his points and he's not getting his message across in the way that he actually wants to. And that is consistent with what I've been saying here, is that every preview, I feel like I'm telling you that Pochettino is speaking two sides out of his same mouth. It's saying one thing, contradicting it the next week, saying this and saying that. And he's done it again. I'm glad his wife agrees, I guess, because at least now we're not all completely crazy and we are actually hearing the same thing. At least we know we're not completely stupid. He also spoke about how he felt after the Wolves 4-2 home defeat, which obviously was the game that completely snapped me as a fan, and it snapped many people. It was a diabolical day at Stamford Bridge. And he spoke about not necessarily fearing the sack after that, but feeling very lonely and kind of being out with the coaching staff outside the stadium or at the ground for hours after the game, and not really feeling comfortable. That's for sure. Not feeling comfortable in his position. So not surprised, because it was a shocking game. But it's weird, isn't it, how we've gone from wanting the season to end a month ago. Like, when will it end? Some people couldn't even watch Chelsea games anymore. I knew Chelsea fans, obviously I'm always watching every game. We're doing every watch along, but there's some Chelsea fans, I couldn't blame them, were saying, I can't watch any more of this. Like, I'm just going to just leave it to next season. It's messing up my mental health. Can't keep watching us play like this. We're just getting absolutely slapped up all day long. To not really wanting the season to end. I'd rather us carry on, to be honest. We at this rate, we might actually get into the top 4 if we keep this form up for another 10 games, So I'd like to see more, but unfortunately, it is coming towards an end, and we got to wrap it up. But listen, it's been a miraculous recovery. We'll call it that for sure, and hopefully it has to continue into next season. I don't think we should place crazy, unrealistic expectations. I was speaking on a playback yesterday with a call-in a show, and people were talking about title charges and 80 plus points, and I'm just here to tell you that we have not reached above 74 points since we won the title under Conte in 2017. So asking for 80 points is not realistic, in my opinion. 74 points was the max that we hit, I think, in 21-22 season under Tuchel. We've not cleared 75 points since we won the title, which is 8 years ago. So, 7 years ago. So I don't think it's realistic. I would say top 4, Champions League football qualification via the league. If that's top 4, top 5, depending on coefficient, I don't really care. Points target, I'd say, would be 70, maybe 75, 70 to 75. Also, win the Europa League and try and win a domestic cup. That would be my targets. Win trophies, get top 4, get healthy 70-ish points. And that would be progression, in my opinion. Especially, obviously, more games, twice a week. Got to handle that. You're going to assume that you might drop some points on a Sunday when you play on a Thursday, all of that palaver. Obviously, Cesc Fabregas also visited the training ground as well at Cobham, which I think is interesting, because I think Cesc Fabregas is kind of like a person that people are lining up as potentially a future Chelsea coach in the long distance, in the long term, which I'd love to see if he makes it, that rise from maybe his Italian side that he's just promoted now this season to maybe a Strasbourg, if we get him into the multi-club model, and then if he's shown that he can improve them and take them to a European position, maybe he is the next person to come in at Chelsea. It would be interesting. I would love to see it in the future. But he's obviously been at the training ground and communicating with some of the boys and whatnot. So lovely to see. And that's basically everything in terms of quotes, in terms of news, in terms of updates, in terms of where we're at. Obviously, with this game, my team is on screen. Gusto is in that side. I think now he's had a couple of games to get himself back to sharpness and fitness. I'm pretty confident that he can play. Nkunku is still giving me a little bit of a PTSD, a little bit of a risk take, to have him at left wing, but Mudryk is out for this game, as you can see on the scroll bar as well. Of course, with the injury updates, there's no Mudryk, along with Lavia and obviously Fofana, Enzo, and a couple of others. So there's still some players missing. But I think Nkunku on that left side with Palmer in the middle and then Madueke on the right is the strongest three we can put out right now. And it means that even though I was fearful last preview that Nkunku would play on the touchline as a winger, because obviously there's no fullback overlapping, which I think is something that we need to kind of put a pin in, and it might not have happened last game, but it could happen in next season if we don't get an overlapping winger, fullback, to give him the license to tuck in, to still create that width on the left-hand side and create that balance. Then I don't want to obviously see him caught out there on the touchline. I want him in the central spaces, in the left half space, cutting in, taking shots. Thankfully, like I said, against Nottingham Forest, he was able to link up with Palmer really well. But I think next season, we're going to need a fullback that can overlap, that can create width, just to guarantee he'll be in that half space and he won't have to do shuttle bus runs. And he won't have, because again, the other concern about him playing left wing was the shuttle bus runs, tracking fullbacks. And for someone that's got an injury record and somebody that's actually had a lot of problems physically in the last couple of years, you don't want to give them some sort of engine, box-to-box, end-to-end role. Preferably, right? You want to protect them, look after them, conserve their energy. So that's my two concerns with him playing left wing. But if he's going to play tucked in and link up with the 10, fantastic. Of course, we know that he used to play left forward at Leipzig, just off the forward, so that area is not foreign to him. So I'm going to put him in there. I'm going to put obviously Palmer and Madueke, Jackson up front. Same pivot as per usual. And obviously Cucurella cutting in, or maybe it will be Gusto, either or. And Badiashile, Chalobah. And I'd probably just bring on Thiago Silva later on in the game. So Stamford Bridge can kind of give him his round of applause. He can take the armband physically off whoever it is, maybe Gallagher, and wear it for the end of the game. And then hopefully by then we're coasting, we're winning 2-0, and he can just relax and just enjoy the last 30 minutes of the match at Stamford Bridge with no stress, no pressure. That would be the ideal situation for me. But we'll see what happens. Bournemouth's team, expected teams on screen. Dominic Solanke, be very aware, former Chelsea player. We know how they've been playing against us recently. The Ola Ainers, the Tariq Lampteys, the Hudson-Odois. They've been trying their very best to cause as many moments of madness as possible, whether it's cheeky fouls and bad fouls, whether it's goals, whether it's mad 1v1 lockups with one of the most frightening 1v1 wingers in the league in Madueke. Ola Aina said, no thank you, no dribbles completed. So be aware of Dominic Solanke. He could end up getting a consolation goal. At best, hopefully, we win the game regardless. My score prediction is 3-1. So yeah, that's the situation. That's the news. Make sure you smash up the likes. Make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you guys for the watch along tomorrow. In a bit, people. Peace.